History is littered with the remains of dead civilizations. When the ancient world's great powers suffered catastrophic military defeats, they typically dissolved. The Babylonians, the Hittites, and the Assyrians were eventually absorbed into the cultures that defeated them until their original identities vanished. The Iranian plateau experienced violence on a scale that should have guaranteed a similar end. Alexander the Great's phalanxes marched here. Arab armies swept through under the banners of a new religion. Later, the Mongol hordes of Genghis Khan left behind nothing but towers of human skulls. After losing their capitals and enduring centuries of occupation, the Iranian people should have disappeared into the genetic and cultural melting pot of history. But time and again, something inexplicable happened. Within a few decades of a conquest, the invaders themselves began speaking the Persian language. They built Persian architecture, adopted the local state bureaucracy, and even began wearing Iranian clothes. Iran survived by essentially digesting its conquerors. They turned military defeat into a cultural trap, forcing every major world power that entered the plateau to eventually reckon with a civilization that refused to be erased. This mechanism of survival was built on a foundation of sophisticated statecraft that predates most of Western history. Archaeological finds like the Giraffe culture established that an urban civilization evolved here 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, developing alongside the better-known societies of Mesopotamia and China. By the 23rd century BC, the Elamites were already practicing advanced diplomacy. When the Akkadian king went to war with them, the conflict ended not with a simple truce, but with a written treaty. This document represents the first recorded international treaty in human history. It guaranteed Elamite independence on the condition that they aligned their foreign policy with the Akkadians. Sophisticated geopolitical maneuvering was ingrained in the culture millennia before the rise of Rome. Diplomacy, not just defense, was part of the plateau's original operating system. When the Aryan tribes settled these mountains, they brought an ideological weapon that would unify the population: Zoroastrianism. This faith framed the universe as a battlefield between light and absolute darkness. Crucially, the religion mapped this darkness to the nomadic expanses of the Eurasian steppes. To be Iranian meant to be a warrior of light, turning every northern raid into a holy war for the survival of order itself. Zoroastrianism also broke the ancient cycle of circular time. They declared that time is linear, moving from a beginning toward an inevitable final battle and a last judgment. During the Persian liberation of Babylon, Jewish thinkers adopted these concepts of linear time and the end of days. These ideas eventually flowed into the foundations of Christianity and Islam, shaping the coordinates of how the modern world still thinks today. By casting every citizen as a participant in a cosmic victory, Iranians forged a national unity that foreign occupiers could not break. This policy of inclusion became a formal tool of empire under the Achaemenids. Cyrus the Great built the world's first superpower by respecting the temples and traditions of the people he conquered, rather than enslaving them. Darius unified the empire administratively, introducing a unified tax system and minting the gold derrick. When military force failed against the Greeks, Persia weaponized this economy, funding rival city-states to keep them in exhausting conflict. By 387 BC, the Greeks were forced to sign a treaty on the Persian king's terms. The Achaemenids proved that economic and cultural soft power could dominate where armies could not. This cultural resilience was tested when Alexander the Great burned Persepolis to the ground. It seemed the history of Iran was finished. Instead, the conquerors were absorbed. Alexander began wearing Persian clothes and adopted the very court etiquette he had just defeated. When the Arab Caliphate took control in the 7th century, they brought a new religion and language. In regions like Egypt and Syria, this resulted in permanent Arabization, but the Iranians struck back culturally. The caliphs soon found themselves relying on Persian scholars, poets, and bureaucrats to run their own empire. Even the Mongol apocalypse failed to erase this identity. Genghis Khan's hordes slaughtered entire cities, wiping out the infrastructure that sustained life on the plateau. Yet, within a few generations, the Mongol rulers embraced Islam, made Persian the state language, and began funding a renaissance of local art and science. For centuries, Iran acted as a cauldron that took in foreign invaders and reshaped them. Whether they were the Greeks, the invading Arab armies, or the Mongol hordes, the conquerors eventually became the protectors of the very culture they tried to replace. By the early 20th century, that resilience was under threat again. Iran was being carved into spheres of influence by the British and Russian empires, who traded the country as a backdrop for their own geopolitical games. In 1935, Reza Shah Pahlavi moved to reclaim the nation's identity. He officially demanded that the world stop using the Greek-derived name Persia, which many in the West associated with fairy tales and carpets, and use the native name Iran. This shift created a modern paradox. Today, the word Iran is often tied to geopolitical tension, sanctions, and grim news reports. Yet the word Persia still carries a romantic, mythical weight in the global imagination. Two names now exist for one land, one representing a difficult present, the other a legendary past. The history of the plateau suggests that a culture's survival doesn't depend on winning every battle. By pulling conquerors into its cultural orbit, Iran didn't just endure 5,000 years, it used them to win eternity.